notifications? No. There we go.
Everyone. Good afternoon and evening, everyone. Welcome to this webinar where we will share our experiences with implementing live virtual interviews and other changes over the last 3 years at the University of Arizona College of Medicine, Phoenix, categorical internal medicine and preliminary medicine programs. I am Cheryl O'Malley. I am now the DIO and Associate Dean for Graduate Medical Education and was the Internal Medicine Residency Program Director until January. Today I'm honored to have some members of our fantastic leadership team with me to present. Dr. Christina Bergin is an Associate Program Director and leads recruitment, and Dr. Brenda Shinar is the Associate Program Director who leads the preliminary medicine interns. Before we start, I want to let you know that with a call of over 3,000 people, we will not be able to have time to answer or cover additional questions, but we've gone through those questions that you submitted during your registration, and at the end of our presentation, we will cover about 20 of those. This presentation is also being video recorded, and you will receive a link to the video in the next few days. Today, we're going to help you begin planning for virtual interviews and visits through reflecting on the experience of our program. We will demonstrate how materials that you have already can be adapted for invited applicants to digitally demonstrate the strengths of your program, and describe the benefits of adding consistency in your rubrics and interview experiences to mitigate applicants' concerns about virtual interviews. None of us have any financial conflicts to disclose, and while I do serve on the ACGME Internal Medicine Review Committee, none of us were involved in the coalition work group that put forward the recent recommendations regarding the transition of the class of 2021. We all know that interview season is a challenge. 3 years ago, I felt like we hit a wall with all the time and energy we were spending on recruitment. And while we were continuing to fill, like most other programs, we were needing to interview and rank more applicants per slot because students are applying and interviewing to so many places. The large number of applications and interviews leads to significant costs for students, both financial as well as the opportunity cost from missed clinical experiences. And the format of a traditional visit day is resource intense for programs, particularly if you're increasing the number of interviews that are being done. I was finding that for our faculty, it was hard for them to schedule a large number of interviews during a limited number of specific visit days due to their other clinical and education responsibilities. And for residents, it was increasingly difficult for them to participate in the multiple events per week with happy hours and breakfasts and lunches over the recruitment season due to their own clinical and educational responsibilities and the need for time off. I felt like my time was not being utilized effectively by repeatedly presenting the same information to applicants. And as a result, I wasn't actually able to interview them and spend individual time with them. So we're finalizing a manuscript with the outcomes, but just some key ones for you all to know today are that we actually were able to increase the number of interviews by 50%, if that is a goal of yours. Our flexibility increased greatly regarding when we could do the interviews, and that decreased those costs on the program as well as the applicants. We reduced the faculty burden of requesting them to interview during prime patient care and teaching times, and we were actually able to decrease the total number of events, which reduced the burden on our residents. And by having all applicants interviewed by both myself as the program director and an APD, it improved the consistency of the interviews and the scoring. And we have recruited as well or better than what we did in the years prior to implementing this and have had no increase in performance issues. And so we're satisfied, and although I'm no longer program director, we can't imagine going back. And so just in case you felt like your in-person interviews are incredibly reliable, the reality is that, even though we're used to it, the existing process still has some significant issues in that interviews don't predict problem residents when that's been studied, and the determination of fit is more broad, not just something that's accomplished during the interview. And similarly, even the interview's ability to appraise communication skills has mixed results. So there's certainly an opportunity for some enhancements. So we had a lot of reasons to do this and went all in, given that we were only going to get the benefits of technology if we did this for all applicants. And we also feared real or perceived inequities if we interviewed some in person and some by video. And so we didn't give applicants a choice, and we implemented 100% virtual interviews in 2017. We've done it now for 3 years and continue to learn from it. More and more programs were interested in it for the same reasons that we had, but then of course we all needed to become interested in it as a result of COVID. And then just this week, it became essential as the Coalition for Physician Accountability's work group to look at big topics around the transition of medical students in the class of 2021, released their multi-stakeholder recommendations. You can see the 4 listed here included that online interviews be conducted for all applicants, including local, and that visits be virtual. So today we're really going to cover how to achieve number 2, but our innovation still involved in-person applicant visits, and so the move to 100% virtual for that will be a change for us as well this year. A useful resource that was put out by the coalition is a compendium that includes a great table with some mitigation strategies to address the challenges on programs and applicants. We found that much of what they advised matches our experience, and we've integrated their recommendations throughout this presentation just to highlight them. And so for the rest of the presentation, we're going to focus on those specifics, the nuts and bolts of what we did. And as I said, we'll have time at the end to cover some of the questions that you all submitted. So I will now turn the presentation over to Dr. Christina Bergin, our APD for recruitment.
Thank you, Dr. O'Malley. So we call our process SPLIT Recruitment. The first element of that is an in-person site visit separated from interviews made possible through video and telephone interviews. There is specific pre-interview preparation for both applicants and our associate program director interviewers to allow the interview time to be spent on high-yield conversations. A specific invited applicant website takes the place of the usual 1-hour program overview by the program director, so she is now able to interview all applicants. The applicants complete their interviews virtually, and flexible timing makes these interventions work well and benefits everyone involved in the process. As Dr. O'Malley mentioned, we were able to interview more applicants while also reducing the cost and the time burden for our faculty, residents, and the applicants. So what does this look like from the beginning to end of recruitment season? First, we go through our usual process of screening applicants and inviting them to interview. Our ARIS invitation explicitly states that our process is different and provides step-by-step instructions to help alleviate their anxiety. It refers to the invited applicant website for more details on the process and helpful resources that we provide for them to be more comfortable with video interviews. In the past 3 years that we've used this format, the students are able to decide if they think a visit will impact their decision about the program and decide when they're able to come. This year, we anticipate moving to all virtual visit days because of COVID. These could still be optional, but it will be easier to make them mandatory with a virtual format. So now we'll dial down to some granular details. Before sending our interview invitations, we create the schedule for both the virtual interview days and the applicant visit days. In order to maximize scheduling flexibility for our program director and APDs, we chose to schedule interview half days. On each of these half days, the PD would need a 1-hour block of time to interview 4 applicants, and an APD would need a 2-hour block of time. The visit days were selected based on the program director and my availability, while also taking into consideration the best days of the week for the program and trying to avoid conflicts with pre-interview dinners for other programs in town. Our total number of interviews that we were hoping to complete, divided that by 4 applicants per half day, would give us the total number of interview half days required. With our switch to video interviews, we increased the number of interviews that we complete to approximately 240 for our program size. So divided that by 4 gave us 60 half days for interviews. Because our program director interviews all applicants, we first selected dates that worked with her schedule, and then each APD identified their availability on those half days. Each APD ended up interviewing on approximately 10 half days for a 2-hour block of time on each of those. Our program coordinator then sent calendar holds for the selected half days with a notation of the length of time needed for interviews. This served as a reminder that we needed to keep either a 1-hour or a 2-hour block of time open during that half day, but it still allowed us to schedule other meetings as needed. The specific 2-hour block of time that I kept open could slide around within that half day as long as I kept 2 hours open. We then locked in the interview time block about 1 to 2 weeks prior to each interview date. We created our interview dates in ARIS Scheduler so that applicants could schedule themselves for an interview half day through ARIS once we sent out their invitation. So this is how our schedule typically looks within ARIS Scheduler. The green boxes are the interview half days created as RSVP events so the applicants can schedule and reschedule themselves. The visit days are in purple, which are private events. I know it looks like a lot of interview days, but in reality, each green box represents only a 2-hour block of time for an APD and a 1-hour block of time for the PD. You can see that we had a week in November with no interviews at all. We also took 2 weeks off over the winter holidays, and we were able to work around other scheduling challenges using this format. Our applicant visit days have virtually unlimited capacity because they're not tied to faculty availability for the interviews. We had 10 total visit days this past year, and attendance ranged from around 12 to 35 applicants at each one. We'd aim to have at least 1 resident in attendance for every 4 to 5 applicants. And for the upcoming cycle, since we anticipate doing all virtual visit days, these could also have a large capacity, especially if we utilize the breakout room features and video conferencing platforms to help facilitate meaningful conversations. Once students had signed up for their interviews, and about 1 week prior to each interview day, the program coordinator would confirm which specific block of time we had kept open during the half day and create our interview schedules. She would then send updated calendar invites to the PD and the APDs, locking in that time frame and containing the applicant information. This would include the specific time frame for each interview, the applicant's name, AAMC ID, and school, and a link to our online standardized file scoring form that we use. We also use a standardized set of behavioral questions and scoring scale for each applicant interview to decrease variability between interviewers. So the link to this form is also included in the updated calendar invite. About 1 week prior to the interview, the applicant is sent an interview day agenda, which we created via mail merge. It includes specific timeframes for all the usual interview day components, such as the program overview and each interview, as well as which faculty member they're meeting with, and links and specific instructions on how to connect for the interview. Our program coordinator is available for questions and test video calls both ahead of time and during the interview day. This agenda also includes a reminder to complete the supplemental information form if not yet done, to ensure that we can make the interview time high yield. In year 3, we eliminated the faculty phone interviews. We felt that it didn't add much to our evaluation of the candidates. So this year, an applicant's virtual interview day had 3 components instead of 4, with a total time commitment of around 1 hour and 45 minutes. The second element of our SPLIT process is the pre-interview preparation. To get the most out of the interview time, we have 2 advanced prep steps: the supplemental information form and the standardized file scoring. The supplemental information form is not a screening tool. We ask the candidates already invited to interview with us to complete it. And they answer some standard questions that will allow their interview time to be more personalized. The responses are copied into ERIS so that they can be reviewed by the APD interviewer before the interview. We ask about their ties to Arizona, future career plans, or any specific interests they have, and if there's any questions in particular that they'd like to explore about the program. Shortly in advance of the interview, typically the night before or the morning of, the APD who will be interviewing is responsible for completing a detailed file review and scoring it using our standardized online form. Because the file is reviewed in advance, then the interview can be focused on getting to know the applicant in more detail and ensuring that any red flags are addressed if they exist. We found the online form valuable for several reasons. It helps ensure a standardized approach to file reviews that are being performed by different faculty. In addition, it helps gather all the information into a format that's easier to refer back to. As the APD enters in the data, on the back end, a score is determined and all of the typed comments are compiled. At the end of the file review, you can copy and paste that score and the comments directly into ERIS so that you can refer back to it later. Next is the actual interview day. Applicants and faculty each have an interview day agenda. The applicants first review a special program website. This takes the place of the usual program overview talk by the PD. They receive access to this unique invited applicant website with their interview invitation, and the link is provided again in their agenda. As you all have likely experienced, one of the challenges with recruitment is to effectively highlight the program in sufficient breadth and depth to meet the needs of all applicants. With our invited applicant website, the students can have access to the information all throughout recruitment season and return to it as needed. It starts with a personal video introducing ourselves and explaining why we've revamped our process in this way. And we also provide resources up front to help them feel more comfortable doing video interviews. The website is set up in an independent learning module format that's both desktop and mobile friendly. You can click through various sections and lessons containing information presented in a variety of formats. We included information covering many different categories, which you can see here, so that the applicants would have an in-depth understanding of our program by the time that they finish reviewing the entire website. The platform that we used is called Articulate, but there are many other platforms that would work well. The various formats for presenting the information, such as videos, voice over PowerPoint, and other interactive features in text, make it engaging for the applicants to go through. We found it helpful to have videos of some of our recent graduates who are now in fellowship or independent practice. They spoke about how they were prepared for their future careers and described specific highlights of the program that helped with their preparation. They just filmed the videos with their iPhones and sent them to us, so it was pretty easy. One of the best features of the Invited Applicant website is that applicants are now able to hear from more diverse voices than they can get in just one visit. They can hear from our graduates and associate program directors or faculty who champion various parts of our curriculum and so on. In addition, we can add important program updates that occur during recruitment season so that when applicants return to the website over the course of the season, they can remain informed. It was also beneficial by making better use of our program director's time. After their dedicated hour for reviewing program highlights and details in the website, the applicants then have their 2 video interviews, one with the program director and one with an associate program director. Our program coordinator, as I mentioned, is available for questions and test calls both ahead of time and during the interview day. By now, I imagine that everyone has lots of experience with Zoom or another video conference platform, and you may have your favorite. We used Skype our first year, and then we transitioned to Zoom, which we've greatly preferred. Skype was just clunky to schedule, and we had many more technical issues with the applicants with Skype than we have with Zoom. In particular, we found these Zoom features very helpful. We created individual meeting rooms for the program director and each associate program director with a personalized link that was easy to send. The waiting room feature prevents the next applicant from accidentally disrupting an ongoing interview. In addition, you can turn on the doorbell sound to alert you when an applicant has entered the waiting room. If you're running behind schedule, it kind of acts like, the knock on the door to let both you and your current applicant know that it's time to wrap up the interview. We created and distributed written instructions to faculty showing them how to set up their personal Zoom meeting rooms. These took them step by step through each setting and included visual depictions as well. I also performed test calls with each APD to ensure that they felt comfortable starting a meeting, admitting someone from the waiting room, and troubleshooting any technical difficulties. The most common issue that we ran into early on with the practice calls was ensuring that Zoom was set up to use their personal meeting ID for on-the-fly meetings so that the applicants wouldn't get a message that you were busy in another call. Zoom also made it very flexible for where we did our interviews. This made a big difference in alleviating some of the time pressures for faculty during recruitment season. You can do your interviews from anywhere, even parked in the car if you're juggling commitments within a tight schedule. We prepped faculty with all of these tips both before and during our practice calls. So you want to ensure that your lighting and your audio is okay. You want to be mindful of your room setup and your background. Elevate the computer's camera to eye level if possible. So I would always put my laptop up on a box or on a thick textbook in order to achieve that. I typically will have Eris open or have some notes on the applicant available to me to refer to if necessary. And when starting your new meeting, ensure that the following boxes are checked. Start with video and use your personal meeting ID. There's often a brief delay after the video connects before the audio connects. So we learn to pause for a moment before beginning to speak. We would just kind of smile, give a little wave to ensure that everything started smoothly and to alleviate applicants' anxiety if they could see you speaking but not hear you. Then you would just complete your interview as you normally do. When it's time for your next interview, the applicant will enter your waiting room after clicking on that personalized meeting link that they have in their agenda. You'll hear the doorbell sound indicating that there's someone in your waiting room. If you're still in with your current interviewee, that's a signal to both of you that it's time to wrap up. Once you've done so and said goodbye, then you remove the current applicant from your meeting room by clicking on the More button that's next to their name in the participants box, and then selecting Remove. You can then click to admit your next applicant and start the interview without ever leaving your virtual meeting room. We created a sample video to demonstrate for others how a video interview can go, starting with the applicant first joining in. You'll see that I have my laptop up on the box to get it at eye level, and then you'll hear the doorbell sound when our pretend applicant joins in. You'll also notice that I pause before I begin to speak and that it's an individual interview. I imagine that practically all of you have now done video conferencing for meetings, either in groups or individually over the past few months. As you've probably experienced firsthand, it's much easier to make a personal connection in this setting when it's one-on-one. Group interviews would be more difficult with video, but not impossible if you use the gallery view, especially if you have a lot of experience doing group interviews. We've always done our interviews individually, and so it was much easier for us just to continue them that way with the switch to virtual. So we'll take a quick look at the video. It looks like maybe.
I'm Christina Bergin. I'm one of the Associate Program Directors. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Dr. Bergin. I'm Shinar.
So how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Very excited to be here. And really excited that we're doing it kind of online like this. Here in Chicago, kind of transportation's been a mess because we just had a snowstorm. So it's awesome that we're able to still connect this way.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm so glad it's helped it be a little bit more convenient. That's the whole goal.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, no, it really worked out.
Yeah. Well, I also saw in your supplemental that you're interested in academic medicine as a future career. And then in Eris, I saw.
So you guys have all done interviews, so you kind of know how that goes. I won't make you sit through the whole thing. But one concern that applicants have with video interviews is around being disadvantaged due to technical issues or living in areas with low bandwidth. We found that about a quarter of students indicated some type of technical difficulty, but they're generally resolved without issue. Perhaps it'll be better now that we're all learning this, but it's still technology and we all know that there are inevitable issues. It's important to be as flexible as possible with applicants who have challenging technical situations. Issues can occur for any reason, either on your end or theirs. If you're prepared for the various difficulties that might come up, it's fairly easy to adapt and continue with the interview. For example, if we had problems with the audio or if a video audio lag was disrupting the flow, we would switch to video plus phone by typing in the chat box what number they could call to connect. And if you build in a little buffer time to each interview half day, you can also just reschedule the applicant at a later time that day, and they'll have time to troubleshoot with your program coordinator in the interim. Even with the challenges of technology, it's very similar to needing to be flexible during in-person interviews. And you can certainly learn a lot about a candidate from how it's handled. I also want to mention again that we use a standardized set of behavioral questions and scoring scale for each applicant interview so that we can decrease variability between our interviewers. The APDs each ask the same set of questions, and then our program director has her standardized questions as well. The final element of our split recruitment is the flexible timing for each component. This is best illustrated by a set of examples. Each scenario starts with a candidate reviewing our invited applicant website after receiving their interview invitation. Sally Southwestern lives locally, so she came to an early applicant visit day before leaving for a series of out-of-state interviews. She then completed her virtual interview and eventually raked the program. Amy Applicant interviewed first because that was more convenient with her rotation schedule. She liked what she'd learned so far from the website in her virtual interview, and so she decided to schedule a visit day with us. To save costs, she timed her visit day to align with travel into town for an interview at another local program. Harry Highscore is completing lots of interviews because he's couples matching, and he's having difficulty coordinating schedules and affording travel costs. So he reviewed the website, did his remote interview day, and returned to the website again later in the season before making his rank list. All 3 applicants have the opportunity to be interviewed, learn about the program in detail, and rank us and be ranked by us. And the flexible timing can still be preserved when moving to all virtual visit days instead of in-person site visits. Our applicant visit day is streamlined and significantly shorter than in the past when we did in-person interviews. Importantly, it's now at a time of day that's less compressed for the residents, which also decreases the burden on them. For applicants, uncoupling the site visit from the interview allows them to be on site with us for a shorter amount of time, which makes it easier for them to travel. We reduced the visit from approximately 8 hours to 3.5 hours with our split process. This meant that some applicants saved on the cost of a hotel by flying in that morning and then leaving again in the evening after the visit was over. Others interviewed at a local program in the morning and then attended our visit day that evening. They also had more time to explore Phoenix and chat with our residents rather than sitting in a conference room waiting for their interview. The large majority of time during our new applicant visit day format is spent together with our residents, either on a tour or having informal conversations that enable them to get a sense of their fit with our program and culture. I know a big concern with moving to virtual interviews is whether you can preserve the meaningful interactions that allow a two-way assessment of each candidate's fit with your program. We found that on our end, we were able to gauge that pretty well between the video interviews and the informal conversations with residents and faculty during a visit. Our residents give us feedback on the applicants that they meet with after each visit day, and we can easily continue that practice with virtual visit days. On the applicant side, 86% stated that the visit day met their needs extremely or very well with respect to gaining valuable insight into the program and its culture through the tour and interacting with our residents over dinner. While it worked very well and added a lot of flexibility, it was still not feasible for some candidates to come visit with us. Those who didn't attend a visit day reported a lower understanding of the program at the end of the interview season, which comports with our intuition that the informal conversations with residents during the visit day are very important. So this past year, we decided to offer a virtual visit day for applicants unable to attend in person. We use Zoom for that virtual applicant visit day also. We scheduled it at a time that worked well for a group of residents who had been very involved in our recruitment process, and then sent an ARIS email invitation to applicants who had not attended an in-person visit day. We had the group of residents in a conference room, but it could also be done at one of their homes, their favorite hangout spot, or in our resident wellness space. I helped ensure everything was working correctly at the beginning of the session, but then I left the room so that the applicants could have an informal, private opportunity to speak directly with our residents. For this first virtual visit day, we had about 11 applicants and 5 residents. The feedback that the residents gave was that it went very well. After some initial introductions, they had a few prepared things to say to get the conversation going. But after that, it seems like it was a pretty free-flowing conversation. We anticipate moving to all virtual visit days for this upcoming recruitment season. And so like you, we're trying to brainstorm ways in which to ensure our applicants can get the best sense of our program's culture. From our experience, the key is these informal conversations that students have with our residents. At our in-person visit days, we would encourage our residents to move around and mingle with different groups of applicants. And so some of the small breakout rooms and video platforms can work to mimic that and create smaller, more intimate groups for more meaningful conversations. A few faculty typically attend our in-person visit days as well. And so we could also use a breakout room for chats with a couple of faculty members without interrupting those discussions with the residents. We were grateful to have a media department at our institution that was able to help film a video that shows a day in the life of our residents, and that can work as a good format for a video tour. An alternative format would be to film residents speaking about various aspects of your program and key areas so that the compilation could showcase areas of your institution that you'd like to highlight. Although we eliminated the faculty phone interview in year 3, we wanted to keep faculty engaged in the recruitment process and to provide another opportunity for applicants to learn about features of our program and areas of importance to them. So instead of a required phone interview, we created the opportunity for an optional phone call with a faculty member who has expertise in the candidate's specific area of interest, such as a particular fellowship, opportunities for teaching, advocacy and leadership, and so on. Through these conversations, the applicants could learn more about opportunities offered by our program to develop their individual interests. This is another way for applicants to get a better sense of who we are as a program and if we're a good fit for them. Next, we'd like to transition to describing our split recruitment process for our preliminary medicine program. And so I'd like to introduce Dr. Brenda Shinar for that overview.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bergin. Preliminary applicants, when they were combined with the categorical applicants on interview day, all the applicants had to listen to the same program director talking about our categorical program. Parts of this presentation didn't apply to prelims, such as continuity clinic or fellowship opportunities. Prelims are taking the same trip together with categoricals, but their destinations are very different. In addition, they counted for 1/3 of our intern class, so we want to make sure we get the right people. So how did the split virtual interview and applicant visit day help us do this? We created a separate website overview for prelims to help make them feel special for their unique contribution to our program. In this video, a prelim intern explained why he chose our program and what he had gained during the year he had been with us as an introduction to his ophthalmology training. We also emphasized research and scholarly project opportunities and choices of electives that complemented their chosen fields. Our preliminary medicine internship is one of only 3 in Phoenix, making it very competitive. We had 747 applications this past year, and we only have 8 spots. We have traditionally interviewed around 50 to 55 applicants each year, although with the virtual interviews, we have easily added extra days, which are when we're made aware of yet another amazing applicant. A co-faculty member and I interviewed each applicant. We looked at our calendars and picked the days and times that worked for us, with 3 interviews per day, adding up to 17 days. The dates were entered into ERIS, and the applicants selected the dates they want and the time slots for both the interviews as well. We rotated the interviews so that within 90 minutes, we had both interviewed the 3 applicants. 2 of the applicants were interviewed back to back, and 1 of the applicants waited 30 minutes between the interviews. At the appropriate time, the applicant would leave the interview with faculty A and then would enter faculty B's Zoom room by clicking on their link. And at the end of the interviews, the co-faculty member and I met to discuss our thoughts and entered a score for each applicant on an Excel spreadsheet. As the interview season progressed, we considered the spreadsheet and placed our new applicants into position on the spreadsheet based on the quartile, which helped us at the end of the season to make our official rank list. Preliminary and categorical applicants came to the applicant visit day together to see our faculty and meet with our residents. When preliminary applicants were scheduled to come, we made sure there was at least 1 prelim on the visit day to meet and discuss with that applicant the program and answer any questions they might have about our preliminary program. With the virtual interview process, we've had continued success matching applicants to our program without a change in the fill line. The process is much more convenient, more tailored to the needs of our faculty and the applicants, and it's easy to add more interview capacity if we need more. I think we'll go back to Dr. O'Malley now.
Yes, thank you, Okay. Thanks, Drs. Bergin and Shinar. Additionally, with us for discussion and answering questions, we want to welcome Dr. Donna Holland, who became program director during this year's recruitment season and had to step into this process. Arletta Espinoza, who is an incredibly flexible, patient, creative, and supportive office supervisor and program administrator, given her expertise in many of the practical aspects of executing on this. And finally, we have Dr. Perry Fuchs, who was recruited in the traditional way, but as a resident getting ready to graduate and as a rising chief, he's been an active leader among the residents and as we've executed this change. So we invite them to be able to help answer some of the questions. We hope that we have answered many of the ones that you submitted with this presentation, and we're really grateful for all of the questions that you submitted in advance. Again, we selected some of the representative common questions, and we'll provide those for you as we go through this. All right, so the first question is for Dr. Holland. How do you get the interviewers on board and comfortable with this process, and how do you ensure that they stay on for the right amount of time?
Well, it's actually easy to do this because our APDs were involved in the interview process, and we're all on the clinical competency committee, and we know how important it is to recruit the right people into the program. So we're going to be spending energy in recruitment activities, whether it is in person or virtual. And the virtual experience, Dr. Bergin made it incredibly easy for us to get up to speed. We practiced on each other. If we were going to have an episode of the I Love Lucy show, it was less intimidating to do that with each other than with our first try. So we had a lot of practice runs. During our APD meetings, we shared a lot of ideas and thoughts, and Dr. Bergin made us a tip sheet, and we standardized the behavioral interviewing questions and how we score some of the information. So that really became a fluid team project to do this and to do it well. And Zoom makes it very easy to stay on time because the doorbell rings and you see your next person waiting. And it's kind of a natural opportunity then to tie things up with the applicant that you're talking to, and then have time to be ready to allow that person out of the waiting room into your Zoom meeting.
Great. And Arletta, can you talk a little bit about the difference in costs?
In the first year, we kept our food budget the same as it was a new venture. However, after each subsequent year and reassessment, we reduced our food budget, but also increased the quality of the food that we provided to the applicants. We continue to include a small gift bag to all of them. We had to purchase a few cameras for the desktop computers for our faculty members, which were very minimal. Without having the in-person visits this year, I know our expenses will drop significantly.
Okay. Another question that you all raised was how do you convey the spirit of the program over interactive interviews and the materials, and does your institution have pre-made videos? And so when we first started this, we were the only program in our institution doing this. And so we created the videos for the invited applicant website, mostly with our phones and some with pretty standard video recording equipment. And then the following year was when Dr. Bergin mentioned that we worked with the media department to make a shorter, a little bit more emotionally impactful video to just capture a little bit of that couple minutes of a day in the life of a resident. And we actually found that our media folks were interested in being able to build their library of interactions between residents and faculty and patients. And so it helped to meet one of their goals as well. And so now that all of the programs in the institution are going to have to be doing this, in my role as DIO now, we've made steps to partner with the media department at both our clinical site as well as at the medical school to be able to create almost like a shell of what would be a pretty standard tour or presentation for each program, and then that can be customized with the footage and a video of the program director and specifics of the resident. So the point is to be able to not be reinventing the wheel with every program, but instead to be able to share some of that core content. We did use a little bit of the pre-made videos, some things that were highlights of Phoenix, some of the videos that are used for medical student recruitment, both on the original website, and then there's pieces of that that you can see throughout some of the other videos that the media team helped us with. So I definitely think that as we're moving into this and everybody is going to be needing some, it's a combination of homegrown videos, some of the ones that you have just from your phone or that you can have your graduates or your residents creating, but then some that are going to be existing and then newly made videos to capture that real spirit of your program. All right, so Dr. Fuchs, have you found that virtual interviews, how have you found that the virtual interviews can highlight your unique location?
Hi, everybody. So what I really found throughout this process was that it was the applicant visit day that really allowed the applicants to really get a feel for our program and our location. And that was kind of a factor of spending less time in the hospital for interviews and spending more time out in Phoenix proper, and even going on hikes. I know a lot of applicants who dared hike Camelback Mountain, one of our iconic hikes here in Phoenix. Speaking with them, it was clear that they often reviewed our website, which had a lot of information. And that really helped them to really get more specific when asking their questions, and really get all their questions answered. And oftentimes I found it helped them come up with more questions to ask us as residents in the more informal setting. And then I attribute this to the more relaxed nature of this non-scored applicant visit day. And I think that this can be carried out virtually, as we did. Dr. Bergin mentioned at the end of last interview season, we did have a Zoom virtual visit day for applicants who are unable to make it to our institution or who had lingering questions. And that session went great. I was a part of that. And I think all the applicants left with all their questions answered.
Great, thank you. All right, Dr. Bergin, can you talk about, are hard questions more difficult to ask without the non-verbals of an in-person interview?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as I had mentioned, we use a standardized set of behavioral interviewing questions in order to try and get that more in-depth and holistic picture of who an applicant is as a person and how they may respond to certain situations. So because we use that same standardized set of questions, we do have a chance to compare more or less how each applicant responds and handles the same type of question. We do sometimes have, to ask a hard question about, a red flag in their file or things like that. I'd say the more you do it, the more you get used to it. And because you still are over video, you have a pretty good sense of some of those nonverbal responses by their facial expression, their body movement. Are they fidgeting a lot in their chair? Are they looking anywhere but at the camera? Things like that.
Okay. And then it was also asked if there are any pre-recorded aspects that you utilize to streamline the day, or is it all done in real time? And I think Dr. Bergin did a great job of showing you about the applicant, the specific invited applicant website, and that there were pre-recorded videos that were part of that. We did have an in-person component during the applicant visit day where the program director gave just a brief welcome and really tried to capture more of that feeling of the program, a little bit more of the personality of the program. And so that was a way where it would be hard to capture that fully in a pre-recorded, and as we move to virtual visits, maybe an opportunity to welcome the applicants to even the virtual visit day and be able to have some live interaction and not have it all pre-recorded. But certainly the pre-recorded components of the information was key in some of the success and eliminating some of the extra time spent conveying information. All right, so Dr. Bergin, maybe talk a little bit more about how do you integrate interviews, including file sharing at an affiliate or VA site?
Absolutely. So our VA faculty were able to use Zoom without difficulty. And we had already moved to using the web-based ARIS software to do our file review several years prior to transitioning over to video interviews. So that part was relatively seamless. Our online file scoring system is in a platform called FormSite, and that was also accessible at the VA. So I know certain programs like Google Docs and things like that are blocked, but that seemed to be one that was easy for them to access no matter where they were. We also found that our VA faculty really liked doing the Zoom interviews because they didn't have to travel to our university campus from the VA campus. And we also didn't have to find an office for them to interview in. So it took them less time overall to participate.
Okay. Great. And Arletta, as the master of all the logistics, how did the ARIS scheduler work for all of this?
So overall, ARIS worked really fine. I did all of my communication through ARIS, sending the agendas, any questions, and troubleshooting was all done through ARIS. The one thing I would love to see happen, if possible, is for ARIS to expand, allow the applicants to accept more than one RSVP, because it's so tedious to have to, they could RSVP for the interview, but when they're scheduling the applicant visit day, I would have to manually do that, and doing applicant visit days for 200 people does take some time. So I'd really love for ARIS to think about that component.
Great. All right, Dr. Shinar, this question, I'll be interested in hearing how can we best prep students for this type of interview, both to perform well and learn what they need about prospective programs.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would just prep students like you normally do for an interview and make sure that they're prepared for the questions that they want to ask, as well as for questions that may be asked of them. But also there are great resources on even YouTube or other places about how to look right in the video interview, where to put the camera, the lighting, the background, and that sort of thing. So that would be really important to review with them as you prepare them for future interviews.
Great. And Arletta, how do you deal with scheduling and canceling at the last minute?
It's actually really easy when canceling happened. Thankfully, we had very few last minute cancellations for both the interview days and also the visit days. But we also had a wait list to fall back onto so we could fill the gap. So it really wasn't difficult to manage.
And Dr. Holland, how do you manage multiple interviews in one day?
Well, everybody knows probably how to do that, but doing it virtually is actually, in my mind, easier because, as Dr. Bergin pointed out, you have a lot of flexibility. In Phoenix, we're lucky because most of the time we're on either Mountain Standard Time or Pacific Standard Time. So many days I could accomplish all of my interviews in a 1-hour chunk of time before I ever even went to work. Because as we're interviewing people in other time zones, it makes it very easy to do those 10-minute interviews, 1 hour of interviewing. You have 5 minutes of buffer in between each applicant, and so the doorbell rings. And as we all know, some applicants are really a lot of fun to talk to, and they're very interesting, and you run into the other interview. And then some applicants, it's not even 10 minutes and it feels like 30. But that buffer helps you to have some flexibility. And if you get done with one applicant, I copied the table of the meeting notice and which applicants I would be seeing that day, and either dictated my thoughts right into the OneDrive document under their name, or typed it in really quickly, either right after their interview or right after the hour of 4 interviews, so that it would be fresh in my mind. Because as a program director, when you're meeting every single applicant, if you don't do that right away, you will regret it later, because you'll miss the opportunity to capture what is unique about that applicant and about that interaction. And the APD interviews were longer, so they had more time to ask a lot of the behavioral interviewing questions and really dig a little bit deeper into any applicant's file that may have had some sort of struggle or any information that needed to be clarified from their application.
Okay, okay. I'm going to skip through a couple because I think that we have covered several of these. Arletta, the question is, any tips for interviewing international medical grads?
Many of the international graduates that we've had scheduled to interview were all already here in the States, so the time zone wasn't such an issue. But if we did have any that were out of the country, I would communicate with them and we would work out a plan to make it fit into their schedule. So overall, it was actually pretty easy to do.
And then, Dr. Bergin, do you routinely record calls so others can review?
We don't, because we have that standardized scoring form for the, standardized set of questions that we ask. And we have consistency across interviewers as well, because we have a relatively small set of APDs who interview. So for our categorical program, it's 6 APDs. For prelim, it's 2, as Dr. Shinar had mentioned. And so within that small group, and also by using that standardized scoring form, we haven't really felt the need to do that.
Okay. And then this question, I think, is a good one. How many interviews per applicant? I think, especially given the fact that there's a lot of different specialties that are on here, this is a hard one to know. We had always done 3 interviews per applicant, and so we started out with that. But then as we did the third interview was a faculty phone call, so that it would be a little bit easier to be able to set up with doing the virtual interviews. And that third phone call really didn't add too much, and we actually surveyed the applicants in our post-recruitment survey, and they said that 2 interviews was just fine. So that really simplified things with the change that we did for this last year, and we added the third faculty phone call being optional and more customized to them. But I'm sure that's going to vary based on specialty. And then Dr. Shinar, what's the best way to get a feel for the applicant's personality, and how can that be replicated during the virtual interview?
I actually have not felt that it was much different than the traditional interview, but in the virtual setting, you get to see their background, and sometimes it's their home, and sometimes their dog walks by. And so that's just another way that you can ask them about a pet or get to know their personality a little bit more, which is actually even more exciting than the traditional interview when they're sitting in your office. So it's good.
Good. All right, and Arletta, does the program coordinator have any interaction with the candidates via video, or is this reserved just for the faculty?
No, I highly encourage having the coordinator interact with the applicants in the video, primarily because we offer the opportunity for the applicant to do a test run with us to test their technology for glitches. Approximately 15 to 20% of the applicants do take me up on my offer. Also on interview days, I'm on standby because every now and then technology will not work the way we need to. So I'll mediate between the interviewer and the faculty, get them together and just kind of get them on their way. So it's really important the coordinator be involved.
We agree.
Yeah.
All right, and I think we're going to go to this next question. Dr. Bergin, how do you accommodate candidates who may have difficulty accessing the internet, laptops, or finding a quiet place to interview? Specifically thinking about underserved, underrepresented, and marginalized communities.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So I would suggest that if possible, those candidates interview at a location at their medical school or in a public library where internet is much more reliable. And we've had applicants interview with us from many, many different locations. Some of them are calling in from their hotel room. So, when they're out traveling on the road for other interviews, they have videoed in from a call room at the hospital, one of their school conference rooms, libraries, as I mentioned, home, all over the place. So it has really worked well for the majority of applicants. And I think, student affairs and advisees as part of helping to prepare students for this type of interview scenario. I think helping them explore what options are available to them with some of those more public settings with more reliable Wi-Fi and internet would be valuable. Generally, we felt like this seemed to improve the situation for underrepresented and marginalized communities because it was a huge cost savings for them. They didn't have to pay for expensive travel to come interview with us and be able to be ranked and rank our program.
Okay. All right, we are nearing the very end of the hour, so I'm going to just move on to the fact that there were many questions that you all raised that we don't have the answers to, given that, like we said, we've had in-person applicant visits, and moving those to virtual is going to be something that we're learning from as well. Many of you asked questions about different technology, and this is going to be an area that we all continue to learn together. So we all know from doing this for many years in all of your different programs that there are incredible students that are waiting to be discovered who are going to be just the right fit for our program. And just like there's no one way to train a resident, but there are standards to fit within, we can still show our unique qualities and recruit students who are right for each of our programs. This year is going to be unique. It won't be easy, and we'll all continue to feel some loss. However, just as we did, I'd encourage you to think about how your program's key attributes and struggles can be highlighted, and how you can utilize this new challenge to highlight those strengths and then be able to mitigate some of those challenges and think about ways that could continue beyond COVID. By each of our programs implementing this simultaneously, we're going to be learning from thousands of small experiments. And we really look forward to learning together as we move forward in this process. The interest you've all demonstrated by joining today and for the East Coast at night after hours is incredible, and we're grateful to be part of this community. We know that with such an enormous group, there's no way for us to be able to address all of your questions, but are hopeful that this presentation has sparked ideas for all of us to move forward and answered many of your existing questions. And we really look forward to continuing to learn with you. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.